Welcome to the X-1 Legion cast. We are over 500, ladies and gentlemen. It's Randy. I got Matt and Mitchum here with me. Thank you guys for listening and subscribing. And this kind of worked out because we've got a super cool episode for you guys. We got to chat with Will Shick and Andrew Dursum from AMG about customizable commanders, the ones that are coming out very soon, a little bit about the ones that are coming out a little bit later this year. So you're definitely going to want to listen to all of that. But before we get into that, we got to do some hobby harassment.
Yeah.
Mitchum, how's that table going?
Yeah, it's not going. It's not. I was gonna try to make up some elaborate lie. Grant on the Discord asked me about it the other day with a picture of what he's been working on, and you know what? I was at a tournament over the weekend. My allergies flared up out of nowhere. Just go ahead and mark down these excuses. I'm sure I'm gonna get roasted for it later. But I felt like death at this tournament that I probably shouldn't have gone to, and I've just had no motivation. So hopefully sometime this week or this weekend while I'm watching some football, I'll get back into it. Yeah, that's all I got.
So remember, hobby harassers, that we're just three lazy dudes trying to keep up with an entire Discord server worth of hobby. So sometimes we get a little behind.
You guys don't get roasted like I do, so I don't want to hear it.
It's like when the three dads play tug of war against the entire children's church, and it's like, oh, those three dads are definitely gonna win, but then they just get cooked by all this crazy children fueled candy strength, right?
And Mitchum, not quite true, because though you haven't been doing anything with your table has been progressing because I have been printing parts for the ATTE.
Yeah,
here's the front. Here's
Bamboo Labs, please
the back.
sponsor.
There's a gap in here. There's another section. There's going to be a bunch of legs. Video people. Here's the front third to scale with the Stormtrooper. It's huge. Mitchum has got to paint this whole thing. Sorry, Mitchum. Also, for me, my own actual hobby, I have been experimenting with, we talked about winter bases. So I primed 3 bases white, and then I painted them various colors of blue. You can't really see it under there, but then I did crackle on top, and I was trying to get which blue I liked the most coming out from the crackle. I'm not really sure from the results, so I'm going to try to paint the top of the crackle now with the contrast, and then see how it pools in the recesses, and then maybe airbrush or dry brush some white on top of that, and then put snow texture on top of that. So I'm playing with it, because with live stuff lining up, I'm probably not going to get my entire Imperial Army finished before Oklahoma Open. So I'm going to take my time with it a little bit and really get the bases and stuff locked in.
So going snow for Empire, huh?
Thinking about it, yeah. Icy. So here's my vision, and this could be not pulled off correctly. Remember Battlefront 1? Renfar, the ice planet, where you'd hop in the saber tank and fight droids, and there's ice caves, and there was the little temple things. That's kind of the ice color I'm going for.
Okay.
So
yeah. I've been trying to think about my Wookiee bases, because I'm having to do some for Rebels, like what I want them to be. And I was like, if there's some future where I do play clones, I'd want the Wookiees to have a little bit of my Rebel bases and my theoretical clone bases. So I'm thinking of because I do the premium bases for Rebels, right? It's that style. So I was thinking maybe a snowy version of that. I don't know. I'm thinking too hard, right? I just do jungle, right? That's the smart move, probably.
So yeah.
Cool. Any other cool stuff? I know you always got Halo stuff going, but
I've got some Halo stuff, but we'll just let the Halo stuff go for today. But I've been working on that too on the side. Those are fewer model count, a little bit bigger models, so it's easier to just piecemeal that as I go. So
yeah, excellent. Okay. I will. Got my annual guys weekend coming up next weekend, so been working on some Dark Souls board game minis because that's the one time a year I actually get to play the board game. But I've been doing a lot of Legion stuff as well. I glued together my first Ewok slinger. I did do more than one though. I did a box of them. So I got lots of glue on my fingers because their parts are a little so small and tiny. Also glued together my first Wookiees this week. So that was like an opposite experience.
Welcome, brother.
But I do have a ton of hobby on the dock though, because like I got to clip this guy out.
Who's that?
This
Randy?
guy. Oh well, this is Commander Luke, right?
Whoa. Oh.
And then I gotta get all the guys out of here and clip these out. Big shout out to AMG. They hooked us up with the starters, and so I was the lucky one. I got to get them sent to my house. So, but yeah, we'll be distributing those out, and we really appreciate them making us feel a little special with some cool starters. But yeah, we'll have. I'm doing an unboxing for the Rebel box, but we're hooking up with Jerry's Game Shop. He's going to do an unboxing for the Empire box, and then both of us are going to do recon list building videos, and then we're going to duke it out, so you guys will be able to watch that bat rep. So hopefully it's going to be entertaining for you guys, but also really good new player content as well. So hopefully you can send it to people, and they'll be like, "Okay, this doesn't seem that hard. That guy can do it, so clearly it can't be that difficult." Yep. That is the hope. Yeah, so be looking out for those videos. With this when you're listening to this episode, those should start rolling out probably within the next week or so. So all very exciting stuff there. And Matt mentioned it briefly, but Mitchum, did you want to give us a quick reminder about OK Open stuff?
Yeah, just real quick, you guys kind of know the spiel already. November 15th and 16th, Oklahoma Open here in Norman at the Embassy Suites. Make sure you sign up. There's block room hotels. I am working on nailing down the price support for the event, and there should be a lot of good stuff. We've had a lot of lovely people donate stuff to give away. We're going to do stuff for best faction, hopefully some customizable commanders for respected factions just as prizes. We're going to do some raffles of some cool stuff. There's 21 people signed up. We're hoping to get to 32. You still got time. Come hang out with us. All three of us will be there. I will be hosting. Matt will be playing, hopefully. And Randy will be there either streaming, doing, he'll be kind of my ace in the hole, just doing whatever I tell him. That'd be nice. So come down, hang out. We're going to do a social event one night. Just come down, hang out with us. It'll be fun. I know I'm going to specifically call out the Army guys right now. Justin, I know you guys are on the fence, and I know you got a whole crew in El Paso that wants to come. Please come. Just come. Just come. Like, we'll make it happen. We'll make it work. We'll make it. I promise I'll get my table painted. Whatever I need to do to get you guys here, I will do it.
Catch these furred hands.
I will do it. I will do whatever is necessary, whatever the government requires. So, please don't.
Man. Yeah. And we might be doing a live episode recording as well after that first night. As like
Mini
kind of our reaction, mini Strav episode. We'd love to maybe pop some of you guys in as guests for that, or just hang out and enjoy some beverages while we record and have a good time. And also, I think we might be sponsoring a Hobby Heralded prize. Once a year, I feel like we should be able to celebrate hobby and not just harass each other about it. So, working on some neat stuff for that. But before we dive into the interview, Mitchum, I need you to pull up that wheel. All right, Mitchum, let's hit that wheel and see who our winner is. Sean Krogulski 9619. Congratulations. We will comment on your comment and tell you how to get a hold of us so we can get you that gift card. Thanks so much for being a listener and commenting, subscribing, and all that cool stuff. Well, all right. Again, just want to say big thank you to Will, Shick, and Andrew for coming on doing this interview with us. They definitely had some endurance to get through some tech issues, and we really appreciate them taking the extra steps there to make it work. And again, the starter box is awesome for them to do that. So we hope you guys enjoy this interview. A lot of design stuff up front, and then kind of in the back half of the interview, there's some interesting tidbits that you'll definitely want to hear.
Spice.
So we hope you enjoy, and just remember, the interview is like a second away. Hey, welcome to the X-1 Legion cast. We've got awesome interview today. It's me, Randy, with Matt and Mitch, per the usual, but we've got some special guests. We've got Will Shick, VP of Creative Development and Strategy for Atomic Mass Games, and we've got Andrew Dursum, lead game developer for the Legion product line. Good to have you guys. How's it going?
Going good. Thank you so much for having us.
Going well.
Absolutely perfect. Nothing wrong at all.
Yeah,
it's so great.
This is not round two. It's fine. It's fine. If anyone notices the cameras are different, that's because the computers didn't work. So now we're doing it guerrilla style on the phone. It's going to be great.
From their secret bunker.
That's right.
Guys, there's some amazing Legion stuff coming out. There is new starter sets. There's some sweet cards coming out. And we have these awesome, cool custom commanders coming out. But before we dove too deep into that, Will, you've been a guest on here before with Mr. Pagani, but we haven't got to talk to Andrew too much. So, Andrew, did you just want to give us a quick rundown about how you came to be?
Yeah, sure. So my name's Andrew Dursum. I've been working with AMG for about 4 years now as the lead developer for Legion. I got started working with games a long time ago. I was one of the kind of first couple of waves of playtesters for actually Star Wars Legion with FFG and Star Wars Armada. And then I did some playtesting for Marvel Crisis Protocol and Star Wars Shatterpoint. And then after a couple of years of doing that, there was a full-time position open with Atomic Mass Games, and I applied, and here I am 4 years later. So it's been a fun ride.
Yeah, very cool. So you've definitely been with Legion for quite a bit then, huh?
A little bit, yeah. There's a pause, okay. But yeah.
It just always pulls you back in, right? Yeah. Well, cool. Let's dive into these custom commanders and operatives. We've got to see all the sweet doctrines for the Rebels and the Imperials, and there's lots of awesome stuff going on there. Fun new design spaces going on. It seems like there's just, I would almost say the more exciting thing is that it seems to like have no end on what kind of different things you can mix and match in there. So what were you guys designed to specific roles, or was it just let's make as many of these as we can and see what fits right? Yeah.
So I mean, like the road to customizable commanders was a pretty intriguing one and very different from how a lot of the Star Wars Legion stuff gets made, right? Because most of the time we have something from the media, usually from the films or the TV shows or the animated series, and we're like, let's put this into the game. And obviously the custom commanders are something that is completely generated kind of out of the ether, pulling from all those different sources, but brand new. And the way in which they kind of came about was through some conversations that I was having with Dallas, our creative director, and we were talking just generally about the idea behind, plastic miniature production and the things we had learned and the things we wanted to try. And we were kind of riffing and jamming on the idea of like customizable miniature kits, things that have a lot of different build options that you can do different things with. He and I and several people, including Andrew, we're all pretty big miniatures hobbyists. Like, we're enthusiasts. So we're playing not just our games, but other people's games. We're engaging with their products. And that really is always a really fertile ground to come back and be like, well, these guys are doing this. Could we do that? Or what do we think of that? How would we maybe do it differently or better in our, in our estimation? And so we started going down this track, which is talking about how would we create the most robust, customizable miniatures kit we could that offered a lot of options, but then the challenge that we presented ourselves was how do we offer a lot of options, but also not have a lot of waste? What's the best mix? How do we do that? And as we went through this kind of process for a couple of weeks, talking with the engineers, going back and forth and looking at things, we kind of started originally with just the idea of like a generic RPG character. Like, how would you do this? And then that morphed into kind of looking at the Edge Star Wars RPG. And then we started like really getting into the Star Wars ideas. And all of a sudden we were like, well, let's just make a bunch of them and see what happens, because it's always good to just kind of test. And so by the end of it, we had all these different concept docs of all these different kind of archetypes and character styles and all this stuff. And several of them we thought could be actually pretty producible. And so that led us to the whole thing of like, well, we have these now. Could we put them in Legion? Like, is this a thing that we could actually implement? Because one of the things that we had often talked about missing from the hobbyist perspective is the idea that you could kind of put yourself in the Legion or create your own characters, tell your own stories. And the generic commanders that existed in the game at the time, they were fine, but there wasn't really any personalization to them. It was just like you take them, they do what they do. Can we go to a more traditionalist wargaming idea of you're going to have this character that you're going to kit out the way you want, and you can do that however you want, whether that's a narrative perspective, a competitive perspective, these different styles of gameplay and stuff. And so since we had these different documents, effectively I took those to the dev team with Pagani and Dursum and everyone else, and I said, hey, we have these things. We'd really like to see them in Legion. We think that we can make these customizable commanders and operatives. And do we think we can make this work within the bounds of Legion? How would we do that? And so we went from a theoretical kind of discussion and analysis of plastic miniatures production and what we could and couldn't do based on what we knew, to a rules development and dev kind of discussion on, okay, we understand the game system. How would we implement this here? And so a lot of it was kind of just experimentation and exploration, not necessarily with an idea that we'd be able to make anything specific. But in the end, it actually turned out that it did all jive and it did all kind of work together. And so that's where the devs kind of took over, was with this Lego set of all these different parts for all these different commander ideas. And we said, okay, how do we go from there? So they started with the bits. And then what we did through the development process that Dursum will talk about is take those bits and turn them into like rules and rule concepts.
Yeah. So, once we kind of had, our box of Legos, to keep using the metaphor, and our marching orders of what we could do with these kits, we started brainstorming off the different units, and we started, really big with like different archetypes and tropes for these customizable characters, because we wanted the doctrines to provide different play styles and uses for the unit, as well as also provide like a narrative and a hobby opportunity for players, right? Like, this was a big chance to give players, all at once, a bunch of different types of characters that they maybe have not seen so far in the game. And so kind of what that looks like as we went through it is we're like, okay, well, what are some different archetypes and tropes? So that's how you get like the kind of the pure support ones that have, exemplar and the courage buffs, like on proven tactician and academy trained, because we wanted to, one of the things we wanted to do from the outset was we already had these two existing units, and we wanted to make sure that one of the doctrines kind of lets you recreate what was there in the past, right? And then from there, we're like, okay, well, what are some of these like tropes and overarching archetypes, but that also fit in with the various identities for the factions, right? So we know the Empire, right? Unless you're, a Force user or have a lightsaber, those characters tend to be more on the, very supporty side. And the Rebels, are known for having all these different, cool and exciting operatives and commanders. So they're more kind of heroic, hands-on, right, in the thick of it. So we just kind of, kept that in mind as we made these doctrines. So that's how you end up with things for Rebels of like, okay, cool. Well, what's a trope of like a Rebel character in Star Wars that we think players enjoy? Oh, like, okay, well, like the gunslinger desperado type, or the like heroically leading the charge type, or for Empire, it's like, the cold calculating, tactician. There we go. Sorry. And or like the grizzled platoon sergeant, right? Where it's it's the grizzled vet that's worked his way up from being a stormtrooper and is leading his troopers across the galaxy. So we just wanted to make sure that whatever we did, that it provided a lot of different exciting play styles for characters to use these units in different ways, even though that it's the same unit card. And as Shick said, also give lots of like narrative and hobby opportunities for players to kind of create their custom character, as it were.
Yeah, and I mean, as far as like cutting room floor stuff, because it was so exploratory, both on the concepting side and the rules development side, we wound up with a ton of stuff that we didn't end up using or that we decided to shelve for later. A lot of that being, when you think about this stuff, right?
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that I'm sure we'll see the light of day at some point.
Hopefully, depending on how players, gravitate towards these and what they add to the game, those kinds of things. We wanted to really distill down to the foundational kind of set of 4 for the factions to start, because you never know. You never know how new things will be, brought into the game, if they'll be additive, if players will really enjoy them, or those kinds of things. So far, we've seen, I think, a lot of positivity from the community, which is really exciting. We love, obviously, what they bring to the game and all of that. But things like if we came up with a really cool kind of melee brawler idea and trope, we'd look at it and say, well, is that better saved for like a Wookiee in the future, or some other kind of race that is known for physical prowess? If you're looking at kind of the sneaky intelligence officer ISB style tropes, is that better saved for a future Imperial build your own that does these kinds of things, or customizable, as they want to be called? Although we'll use build your own a lot, because that was the internal like reference. Was we just called them the BYOs for really 2 years. So it's as you'll notice, it's a hard trope to get out of once you've like called something that forever.
I have a sticky note that says customizable, not BYO.
There you go. Yeah.
Oh man.
And so there were a lot of ideas that hopefully we'll get to explore and we'll get to go through and to do more of in the future. And I think even for the characters that are available now, there are obviously avenues that we could have gone down or we explored that we didn't wind up doing. Will those be released, in future upgrade card packs or things like that? I think the exciting thing is that, much like with everything with Legion, you can always expand options and opportunities through those upgrades. And so, the future is pretty bright, hopefully, based on how these 4 kind of hit the ground running and what we see with them doing in the game.
Yeah. So speaking of the future a little bit, we have some really cool battle forces. You talked about big kind of brawly commanders. Maybe there's a Wookiee customizable in the future or something like that. Do you see I think in the Battle Force documents already, there's listed some of the doctrines that can be taken. Is there a world where there's some that are specific, like Chewbacca's best friend doctrine for Wookiee defenders, or Anakin's other Padawan for 501st or something like that?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely, right? Battle Forces kind of give us an opportunity as designers and developers to kind of like push the envelope a bit and kind of do kind of a little exciting nuances and quirks that wouldn't really fly in kind of the greater faction as a whole. So yeah, I mean, absolutely, right? We have this great new design space to explore. Absolutely, there will be battle forces with bespoke doctrines that are unique to that battle force. Definitely something players will eventually see.
That's cool. I'm excited.
That sounds like Shadow Collective, baby.
Oh, it always comes back to Shadow Collective with you folks. Every time.
Gotta throw a carrot every once in a while,
I gotta represent.
I mean, we showed a Savazo crash to Gen Con, which I don't even think is on the question list. So,
it's there. It's there. It is there. It is there.
Okay. Moving on a little bit. Both the Rebel and Imperial custom options had some new weapon options. Are those going to be the only weapon options for the Rebel and Imperial agent and officer? or are there maybe some more coming in the future potentially with other customizable units, or how's that kind of going to work?
I mean, I think largely the weapons are based off of what winds up in the set, right? And what goes on the frame, because we do want, well, players are encouraged to obviously hobby to their heart's content. There is that whole, we are playing a game with another person. Our wildest dreams and creativity have to be recognizable in some way, shape, or form that allow our opponent to have a general understanding of what's going on the other side of the table, right? And so in that case, right, if we were to create some wild new weapons that didn't really reflect anything that was in the pack, we would obviously want to introduce those with new pieces or new miniatures that would reflect it in some way, shape, or form. So would you see, for example, like an HH12 option for the existing Imperial officer or Rebel commander? Probably not, because there is no way to functionally make that clear to another player. Now, could we say take the Rebel heavy weapon and apply kind of a different name, or call it like juiced, right? Juiced heavy rotary cannon, and it did something different. I think that is within the realm of acceptability, because whereas those things could stand for a couple of different things, the reality is that it's pretty clear that, hey, I'm taking this, it is representing this, those kinds of things. And that's a fine line that we always have to walk when it comes to developing and designing tabletop miniatures games. The cards do tell you the rules, right? We have these references and these touch points that say this is what the thing does. But the reality is that what we engage with as players for the vast majority, 95% of the game, is not the cards, it's the miniatures themselves, especially when we're talking about our opponent, right? Because so it's very, very important that as a player, I can look at my opponent's army and quickly recognize what the different things are based on what they look like, what they're equipped with, those kinds of things. And that's where you get into those, those fine discussions about modeling for advantage and these kinds of different things, right? At the end of the day, as Pagani likes to say, if you have to ask if you're cheating, you're probably cheating. And I don't think most players really are interested in that. So it always comes down to, how do we make sure that the environment is healthy, fun, players get to be as creative and inventive as they want, but also that when you sit down to play that game, you're like, okay, I know what I'm looking at for the most part. I understand what these things are. It's very clear to me that I can track what my opponent is doing. And so I think that's kind of where that line comes down. And it was one of those things where we had to be pretty aware of what, again, going back to how the process started, was you have these bits. You need to make sure that these bits translate into these rules in a way that kind of makes sense for players to allow them to track these infinitely customizable characters.
Yeah. Yeah, and I remember one of the things that we would do, like while we were in the concepting stage for this, because we started. I mean, there's like 4 doctrines per unit. We started with it, as we said, way more than that, and what we would do is we'd have like the doctrine cards printed out in front of us, and then the different armament cards, and we'd say, okay, well, kind of the overarching goal, besides let people do, make cool different combinations, is we don't want players to kind of get like the perfect combination, right? So it's like, okay, well, if I take this and this, I can do, this thing. Oh, but then I really want the rule that's on this one instead. So we kind of, wanted to make like a little like matrix of, okay, like how do you equip your character, and the keyword system was really fun to work with that, right? Because, as you've seen, we put rules and keywords on the different weapons. So it's great. Well, if I take my doctrine, and I get the vibroaxe, I get like this kind of suite of abilities. But then if I take, the blaster pistol instead, I still have the same doctrine, so I kind of play the same way, but maybe that kind of makes me pivot how I'm going to use this piece on the battlefield. So it was really fun, kind of going through and developing all these different various combinations of weapons combined with doctrine, and what rules did that give you or not give you, etc.
Okay, that makes sense, because I've been trying to decide. It's like, do I do platoon commander or tip of the spear? Which one is like I want both of them.
Why not both? Yeah, you guys just take 2 units.
Yeah. Well, that kind of segues into the next question. When you guys were designing this and you're doing this matrix, Andrew, how tough it was it to try to not surpass the named characters in the game, even if that was a concern? And if so, do you guys think you guys hit the mark on your design so far? I mean, I know we haven't seen them in the public or in a tournament yet, but I'm sure there's been lots of playtesting and stuff like that. So,
Yeah,
what are you guys' thoughts on that?
From the very beginning, we wanted to ensure that these new units didn't, step on the toes, so to speak, of any of the existing options. So one of the things that we did was we sat down and we kind of looked at all of the existing units and kind of future units in the game, unique units, characters, and we kind of identified just real quick like what their niche is, right? So that we make sure that we're not going to make an option that surpasses that. So just to give a quick example, right, like Han Solo still needs to be probably one of the best like solo short range attackers for Rebels, right? Like Veers still probably needs to be the best option for supporting vehicles in Empire, right? We don't want to make a character that is better at that, right? And then one of the other parts of this kind of make sure that these customizable units can be unique and flavorful and kind of stay in their own lane. One of the solutions we came up with was to intentionally limit each one to just one command card instead of having like three of each, or having the Imperial officer and agent share three, for example. And that's to further differentiate them from the unique named characters. So now you've got, not only is Anakin the scariest melee option for the Republic, but he also provides command cards to support his army and the customizable Jedi or Rebel officer, Imperial agent, right? They're not going to have that same suite of command card abilities in the same way as the unique characters are, and that's kind of another way that they kind of stay in their lane. But the upside to that, right, is they don't have to compete for command card slots, right? Because we've seen that that's a big part of playing Legion is like, all right, well, I want to take these two characters, but they both have a really strong 2-pip, and if I take both of their 2-pips, then that locks out another card that I might want to take. And so just the design of these overall really fits into kind of the philosophy that we've talked about in past updates of, we really want to make it easier for characters to for players rather to include these iconic characters in their army, right? Like let's let players take these cool characters and put them in their army. So that was a big thing that we had in our minds while we were designing these custom characters.
I mean, I think the place where they compete the hardest is obviously on those lower cost, the lower end, more commandery special characters or unique characters like your Leia, your Veers, maybe your Sunfac. Although at 55, who's competing with that guy? No one. Like you can't get any cheaper unless you're Padme. But because I think when you talk about the really powerful, your Jedi Knight Luke's, even your Commander Luke to some extent, your Count Dooku's, those General Grievous's, those kinds of things, those characters wind up with so much like push, right? Now they cost more points, but they just get more. They get more and they get a lot of unique stuff. And so in that case, it's very easy. But I think when you're saying, do I want to take a customizable Rebel officer instead of Leia, there's definitely a debate, and I think that comes down to player choice. Now, whereas I know some people are like, I'll never take a Leia again. I think there's a discussion to be had as people start to play and explore that says, oh, but I really want, maybe I want Leia's 2-pip or I want her 3-pip. Maybe maybe there's value inherent in Leia that's not there. Maybe there's a combination of them, those kinds of things. So will some people find, and I think this is a personal choice thing, that certain named characters get pushed out? Like, do we see as many Veers anymore? Potentially not, right? Especially if, for example, the vehicle meta kind of starts to wane and there's not as big of a reason to take vehicles. You might not see as many Veers. If all of a sudden, Empire gets an influx of heavy armor and that really emphasizes Veers again, you might see his stocks rise. But I think that's the ebb and flow of these games in general, is that certain things will kind of they will crest and then they will fall. And it's our goal to make sure that we're maintaining that. But at the end of the day, no matter how far you fall, the goal is that you're always a viable option, right? Just like when Andrew was talking about the matrix of the different options that a customizable could have, and wanting to make sure there was no perfect solution to it. Our ideal is that that's army building in general. There is no perfect solution. There's always many different variables or variations of the perfect solution. And if we can hit that, then you have player choice, and that means that you as a player get to express yourself in these different ways.
Yeah, totally makes sense. I think these just the building it is a great aspect of list building, because you guys have been saying. Moving along, you guys have talked a lot about faction identity, something that you really want to bring to the game and stuff like that. Do you guys feel like these units are a particular representation of the faction identity you're aiming for with Rebels and Empire? Particularly the emphasis on like Empires, they want to, they want priority control, and like a lot of suppression going out and stuff like that. There's a lot of weapons and upgrades that really kind of lean into that way. Is that kind of part of the thought process when you guys are thinking about these?
Yeah, I mean, like, is it? Oh, go ahead, Shick.
No, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, like, yeah, as I was talking about earlier, when we first started designing these, we started very big of like, okay, what are just like archetypes of characters in general, right? And then it's like, okay, you take that group and you're like, all right, so then we're gonna think about the different faction identities and how we can, get this group, through that kind of Venn diagram, right? And then narrow that down further. So as I said, right, like for Empire, right, one of the big identities of Empire is their core units, right, and how they are, supported by their commander units that are not, people with lightsabers, right? So like the Veers, the Calluses, or the Veers, the Krennics, and the old generic Imperial officer, right? Like those type of units. So you've got the ones with Exemplar that hand out tokens, right? Give aid and placement trooper, direct core trooper unit, things like that, right? How could we make these different archetypes for the Imperial characters empower these core units, which is kind of one of the big themes of Empire. And then again, the Rebel units, right? Like they're a little bit more heroic, right? They're a little bit more hands-on. So, what are some kind of archetypes or tropes, that kind of represent that? Well, the guy with the vibroax like leading the charge, right, heroically, or sneaking around to throw a thermal detonator at a tank, right, in an opportune moment. So yeah, I mean, as Shick said, we've got big plans for these, and I think with this initial batch we did a good job of trying to hit the faction identity.
I think it also really depends on the faction too. Like for example, the Empire one is very exciting because it really adds an element that is currently not available, or is not represented among the characters as well as we would want it to be. And so in that way, right, there's definitely like this feeling of the Imperial one adds a lot. Whereas I think the Rebel one kind of just continues the trend of Rebels that is pretty well established with the heroes are very heroic. They're either spies or they're kind of frontliners, and they inspire the troops around them. The Republic one with the Jedi is a really exciting kind of new lane that we get to explore, because for a long time, if you wanted to take lightsabers, you were kind of limited to these main characters. They were very expensive. You couldn't take a lot of them. In practice, you really only ever took one. And so with these kind of build drums, we said, okay, well, what does a cheap Jedi get to look like, right? Like a lower cost Jedi that is still flashy. It still does Jedi things, but it doesn't necessarily eat up the whole budget. So realistically, you could take this with an Anakin. You could take it with an Obi-Wan. You could take 2, 3, or 4 of them if you really wanted to be crazy, and add that to the other, to the ARF Trooper, unit attachment that we saw, the Jedi Guardian. And now all of a sudden you start to get to see this faction identity that isn't just the Grand Army of the Republic led by a Jedi general, but instead you start to get to see an army that is more like we see in Attack of the Clones, right? In that episode 2, where it is more Jedi than it is clones, or it is kind of an equal mix, because it's a combined arms approach. And so that was really fun and exciting to kind of explore. And then I think you go to the Separatist one, and the Separatist one doesn't necessarily push the faction identity anymore, but it is very additive to it. It goes back and says, okay, we have these bigger units of B1s. We have seen these kind of changes to AI. What does that mean from a commander standpoint? And how do you play kind of this massed, droid invasion style force? What do these bring to it? And we see a lot in the media, especially in the animated Clone Wars, that, your Dooku's and your kind of force using characters are not usually around. Typically the droids are just led by a droid general. And now we can really kind of like lean into that idea outside of a Kraken or a Kalani, build on the ideas of the original Super Tac droid, and really start to give players, again, these unique customizable options that allow them to express that army build in a way that they feel like fits their meta, fits their playstyle, fits the selection of objectives and missions that they have available to them at the time, all these different things.
One of the things that was really fun to work on for this whole project, right? With the Rebel Imperial officer, we wanted to kind of maintain that through line that we had with the existing units. But the Jedi and the super tactical droid, right? There was already a generic super tactical droid, but it was really fun to kind of just branch off and create something completely new. And really get to play with that and make something that was, the super tactical and the Jedi each have their own kind of quirks that you're not going to see with the Rebel and the Imperial officers. So they're kind of their own different beasts, which was exciting to work on.
Is there going to be like a Jedi that's just like dies quickly, and the dude that gets shot by Jango at the balcony?
That poor man.
You talked earlier about the some of these upgrades already being in the battle forces. So the Jedi trainings was a whole additional layer for those units that you don't see on the Rebel Imperial officers.
Okay. Okay.
Nice.
Okay. So I feel like generally people are thinking, what we're getting for the points on these is pretty great. We've seen some recent or relatively recent reworks on some characters like Jyn and Callus, where the price has gone down quite a bit on those. Can we look at customizable units as like a new baseline for kind of what we're expecting to get out of utility for the points going forward?
I think overall, they are in line with what our vision is for where characters fit within an army game like Legion and where we want to see Legion go, right? Those obviously the last points adjustment that kind of surprised everybody. A lot of aggressive points reductions. We already joked about Sun Fac and things like that. But characters can only do so much. Their dice pools can only be so big. They have a huge impact on the command and control structure of the game. But in terms of the overall, killiness of the game, they're typically kind of restrained to only being able to do maybe as much as a unit. Maybe they're more reliable. That's usually how it kind of works out, right? Their dice or their ability to cause wounds to a unit is very reliable. There are a few of them that can wipe an entire unit, pretty effectively, your Vaders and things like that. But the game is always going to be centered around these units. And so if that's kind of the sentiment, but you also want to see more characters, then you have to say, okay, where are these characters very powerful and where are they deficient, and how does that affect their points? And I think the other thing that we talked about with the big aggressive adjustment that we did on several of the characters previously was, at the end of the day, with a unit, you can take multiples of it. So we have to be kind of conservative on what that unit is point costed, because when you can just hit the copy paste button over and over and over again to X number, right? Whatever that value is based on the unit's type, that can have an exponential effect on its effectiveness and on its impact on the game. But even the most powerful character, an Anakin or a Vader, there's only one of, and it's a 6-foot table. So what's the zone of control that character actually has? How impactful can it be? The answer is quite impactful, but not as impactful necessarily as, say, 6 of a core unit that's been kitted out in a very specific way. And I think there's a balance point that we are continuing to find and adjust to. And our current kind of mindset now is that because characters are limited, because they are restricted, a lot of them can be cheaper. And that may make them extreme bargains for their cost, but at the same time, you still only get to take one. And at the end of the day, what we see, I think, over and over again from the community is that it is more fun to take more characters than it is to take less characters. And that kind of like comes back to these customizables and where they fall into the value, and where we're going to see additional points adjustments likely in the future as we continue to monitor and look at this stuff. The trend is to see reductions in characters overall, right? To see that balance found where characters can be very strong and they can be great choices for their points, but you can still only take one. You're still limited by the force org. Therefore, these other units are still going to have more breathing, right? I think it's a double win because you can take more characters, but you can also take more units. And at the end of the day, that's really what an army game wants.
Yep. Very cool. So Doctrines. Are they're obviously they're a new slot, they're a completely new upgrade facet to all the characters. Is that something you could see making their way for characters outside of the customizables, or is that something that's going to be limited to the customizable characters?
Throw in Jedi training on that.
Yeah, I mean that's a good question, right? And you know, the answer is, we don't know. I feel inclined to say, that for the named characters, right? If we wanted to make a new version of that character, we would, just make a new version of them. Kind of like, we have the new Han and Luke that are coming, rather than give them doctrines. Since the name characters, they don't fulfill that same kind of the same exact creative and hobby function that these customizable characters do, right? Like these customizable characters are about like kind of getting to inject your own, story and narrative and whatnot into your army. So I think that we would want to, keep the doctrines as a large part of that, to these kind of this group of customizable characters. But I mean, never say never, right? If it's the design that makes the most sense for a particular unit and works the best, and I could, see us doing it. Or if Shick gets a crazy idea of how to, make them work in some way, right? He could call me to a meeting and be like, "Hey, we're doing this." So you never know. But I think that, I'd be inclined to say that it's just something that would kind of exist on these custom characters.
As Dursum kind of mentioned, right? I think our overall philosophy has always been these characters, these iconic characters. They have so many different iterations throughout the stories. You can think of all of these different versions of Luke, from when he's, on the farm boy on Tatooine, to when he's the, Red 5 at the end of that movie, to him being commander on Hoth, to him going to Dagobah for training, from him confronting Vader in Cloud City, to him like showing up at Jabba's palace as this new Jedi Knight, all in black. He's back in black. And is he good? Is he bad? We just don't know. And that's just the three movies, right? So when you talk about trying to create these characters, I think there's just a philosophy of, are you trying to make one character that fits them all? Or are you going to take that and create very specific and nuanced like versions of that character that try to showcase it at various points throughout its journey? And our philosophy has always been that. It's been to say, okay, here's this character here, let's really define it in. And I think that is true of Legion as well, right? You see the Commander Luke versus Jedi Knight Luke, Darth Vader versus Operative, like Commander Vader versus Operative Vader, those kinds of things. Our goal really at this point is to accelerate that process and to try to start saying, okay, we know that there are all of these different beloved moments from these characters. We don't just want to see General Han Solo. We want to see Han Solo from Episode 4. We want to see Solo from a Solo story. We want to see these different kind of like moments in time encapsulated on the tabletop, so that everybody who says, well, this is my favorite version of that character, this is my favorite story beat from that character, can see that character come to life and to be able to use them in that way. And again, going back to the idea of, if we want the unique characters, the named characters, to feel very powerful, this kind of goes back to the Battleforce discussion, which is, the more you can insulate something, the more likely you can push it without breaking anything. Because the more variables you introduce, the more you have to be like, okay, well, we have to be careful here, we have to be careful here. What happens in the future when we do this? So kind of limiting the scope or the ability for players to customize those things allows you the ability to push a little further. And if you tried to make one Luke to rule them all, for example, any of those Luke builds would likely be less powerful than each individual Luke that we could make. Because when we make those individual Lukes, we're able to say, okay, this is it. This is the whole package. You can never change it from here, right? Outside of like some upgrades and things like that. Universal upgrades are obviously the X factor that we always have to battle with as developers, but we kind of know where those things are going. And so I think that's kind of like where the wall or the hurdle can come when you're talking about that stuff. Now, could we see upgrades that work similarly to, for example, the Doctrines? Potentially, right? Like, it's not out of line to say, well, we want to expand the way that Jedi can choose their forms. So now we're going to make form upgrades, and you can choose X or Y based on your thing. Like, there's definitely expansion that can happen, as Dursum says. Anything is possible, but I think that's kind of, if you're talking about like the now, where the mindset is, where the philosophy is, that's really where it lands.
Yeah, if you want to go ahead and do that form thing, that'd be great. Just push that right now.
Here, push it live. Send it.
I'm just gonna put Maul's form on everybody. Okay, I think Andrew earlier mentioned thermal detonators, and I am very hyped that those have finally come to the game. They are pretty strong, but they are expendable. And we also saw the impact grenade kind of get a rework when 2.6 hit. Do you guys foresee any other reworks coming to that slot? Do you want to talk about the design process of the thermal detonator? It's pretty strong, but it is expendable. Is that kind of also like the philosophy? Similarly with like burst of speed, you can do an amazing thing, but you get a little more leeway on it.
I mean, as Shick said, right? So that upgrade's gated to the agent and the officer, right? So, and it's also expendable. So yeah, right. When it's something like that where you can only take it on certain things, right? It's one use only. Yeah, I mean those can be pushed quite a bit, right? And I don't think it's super outside, the realm of acceptable upgrades, right? You've got, some of the Mandalorian characters that have a one-use flamethrower that instead of I think it's 4 or 5 red dice, right? Like they hit, red dice spray for the whole unit, right? So yeah, I mean it's definitely, as Shick said, you can kind of push things a little bit when they're siloed into, very specific use cases.
Yeah, as far as like the rest of the grenades go and stuff, I think it's one of those things where we need more data really to see like where it's going. The impact grenade change was very specific to concerns that were coming out of playtest and how things were working with the new edition and how armor was impacting things based on the fact that there were a lot of changes made to it, but also that vehicles could now contest points, those kinds of things. And we were looking for, catch-all solutions that said, okay, if I don't want to take a bunch of impact heavy weapons, but I still need a way to deal with impact, how can I do that? Changing the grenades might be a way to do that, looking at those kinds of things. So could we see changes to more of them potentially? I don't think, as Dursum points out, right, that you should really put thermal detonators whereas we could say that the customizables kind of represent where our mentality is in terms of point costs for characters, between power level and utility and those kinds of things. And we're moving towards that with the other characters and points updates as we slowly move through stuff and we see how things are playing out. Thermal detonators are not kind of the gold standard of where we see grenade upgrades going, for instance, or even other weapon upgrades and things like that, because they are a unique situation, right? And as far as they kind of go, they are in some ways printed on the character cards themselves because you can't take them outside of them. And so that gives us the flexibility to say, okay, they're gated, but also you're kind of you have these different dials that we can play with where, much like a heavy weapon for a unit, you can dial up the cost of the heavy weapon, you can dial up the cost of the unit, you can dial down the cost of the heavy weapon. There are lots of different ways to kind of bring those things into balance if you wind up missing the mark overall. And so that's one of the reasons that I think we can be a little more aggressive on those kinds of things and give them those abilities that may be like, oh, if you could put this on a unit, it'd be busto. And no doubt it would be, right? If all of your stormtroopers could run around with thermal detonators, it'd be a fun time for you and a bad time for everyone else.
Yeah, or make like a new type of grenade, right? That's only siloed to certain types of units, something like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, well, to kind of wind us down here, what are your guys' favorite customizable commander/operative loadouts so far? Andrew, I saw on you guys released a transmissions either last week or earlier. You painted up one of the Imperial officers or Imperial agents. I don't know. It looked really good, by the way. You guys should definitely go check it out. But yeah, do you guys have a favorite loadout so far?
I personally have a few. Oh, go ahead, Chick.
No, you take yours. I gotta go
Okay.
actually look at the card names because I'm gonna be like, I like the one that does the thing with the thing.
I like the fight punch guy
and the whatever, and he does like
Sure.
the other thing. Because we never have final names when we're playtesting these, and we did it like so
Right.
long ago.
Sure.
No, I actually wrote mine down. I've got a few. For the Rebels, I really like the heavy repeating blaster on the Reluctant Hero. For the Relentless, or the Frontline Commander for the Spur and Tactical. It just kind of gives you two different ways to play that heavy repeating blaster. It's just super cinematic to have that character, like slowly marching towards the enemy, blasting away with their, their chain blaster. We also had a really funny playtest moment where Michael Plummer took the Frontline Commander. I think the one with Spur, with a vibro axe, and he just charged his commander at a bunch of my stormtroopers and was screaming and having a good time. That was super fun. For Empire, I really like the tip of the spear with just the simple blaster pistol, because you've got your direct core and aid with the tactical and the target from the pistol to kind of give the aim tokens around as needed. And then as I did my one that was in the marketing article, I really love the platoon commander with the combat armor and the Z6 riot baton, because it's just kind of that trope of the grizzled sergeant that's pointing it out the the enemy boss character. He's like, he's mine, boys. I got him. Leave it to me. So that combination, it's not going to necessarily win a melee fight, but he can definitely lock up a force user with a lightsaber for way longer than he probably should. And just kind of tar pit them. So I like that combo.
Love that. Yeah, love that. That's awesome.
Yeah, that baton's got some good dice. Good dice.
Almost Darksaber-esque.
Oh no, you guys are talking about the stun baton is crazy. Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah. So I'm a little biased, but the way the chance to build your own Jedi, obviously very exciting to me. There's an article that's going to be coming where it's the other two customizables built internally. So obviously, like a true warrior, I jumped on the chance to build my own Jedi's, and I always love doing the aggressive builds. Like if I'm going to have a lightsaber, then I want to use it, and I want to use it effectively. So I was big into the Jedi Guardian, which is so I think the fun part about doing the Jedis was we got to do kind of the classic, you had Guardian, Consular, Negotiator, things like that. And so the Jedi Guardian for me was one of my favorites because you get charge, you get surge to hit, you gain lethal one, you get all the murder, which is really great. And then of course the chance to be able to run a double bladed lightsaber, who doesn't want that? That's just so cool. And then there's some neat synergy between those, because if you have the double bladed, you get if you have charge, you get tactical one. If you don't have charge, you get charged. So you can do kind of this mix and matching thing where if you didn't take the aggressive Guardian Doctrine, then you can still get charged with your double bladed lightsaber. So your Negotiator, who decides that negotiations are boring, he can gain charge and run in there and slice things up and everything. Yeah, it's a very fun kind of go. And we had folks who built the more Yoda, I'm using all the force powers and oh look at me, I'm a space wizard. I just not interested. No, I'm gonna take all the things that give me all of the aggression. So I effectively tried to build Maul in Republic through this. Was really where we wound up, because there's a Master Duelist upgrade, and that gives you jump 1 and all these things. So effectively you can just create a good guy Darth Maul kind of feel, run in there and just cut down all of your foes. And for me that was my favorite build. But there's a lot of really cool things. The Super Tac Droid's another really fun one where you can build a very aggressive Super Tac, that kind of breaks the mold of what we've seen. Kalani and Kraken, they have some offensive output, but they're mostly based around their supporting abilities. Between the spider legs and the arm cannon and a couple of the other things that you can get out of that set, you can create a pretty solid frontline like super tac droid that is leading the charge and just mowing down fools. And that was another one that was really fun for me. Partially because it kind of breaks the mold of what you expect, and I think that's what's really fun about these characters. But also, like, it's a cool image where you're just, you get to be like, goodbye, meat bags, and you just start blasting.
like literally, some of the art for the Super Tactical Droid is probably some of my favorite Legion art we've done, because it's just brutal and it captures exactly what Shick is talking about. So I'm really excited for people to see that.
Yeah, I saw a picture somewhere. I don't remember where, but it was like people are like hiding from the super tac, and it's like that's terrifying. So that's awesome.
Yeah, I think that's actually I think it's the operative art for the card. But he's like hunting down clones or hiding in the forest behind a tree, and you're just like, well, sorry, boys.
Love that.
Spider legs equals nightmare fuel for some reason.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. So, Will, I'm just looking on your shelf to make sure you're not stealth dropping a new unit.
No, there's no new unit.
Okay.
But I've got one of my customizables on the shelf, but I already pulled it down. So
nice.
This was one of the two that I built. So she's got the really cool, and I forget the name of the weapon, but it's based on a Japanese. It's the katana that has the hilt that's like as long as the blade.
No dachi.
So that's it. And so that was one that Dallas did, and then the one that's in the article that I did, obviously that's the one I was talking about, where he's got the double bladed and he's all aggressive and super super beady. But no, there's no secret units back there. I've got a couple of frames in the house, but they're not built.
Oh. Well, I guess I'll just talk about the last one you guys stealth dropped then. Was it Gen Con? There was a little teasing of Mr. Savage Opress, I believe.
Yeah.
So needless to say, I was quite excited to see this fellow make his appearance. And then there was terrible rumors about him being in a CIS box, and I mean that is one way to deliver him to the world, I suppose. So I was just curious where he might make his appearances throughout this lovely game.
Yeah, so I think, honestly, he only wound up in kind of two spots within his short time with us in the story, which was with Dooku as his apprentice, and then obviously he got hooked back up with his brother Maul, and they ran a semi-successful criminal venture for a while, until his time with us was cut short by a relatively angry octogenarian with twin lightsabers. So
who does not believe in business.
Does not. No, he does not. He does not believe in profit, only control. But yeah, so I mean, this Savage, our goal here was to obviously really focus on the Separatist Alliance portion of him, but he is available for those who want to be able to play in Shadow Collective as well. And he will come with 2 different unit cards that kind of cover those things. So he'll be in both spots. And there'll be more information about him. So he's pretty early in the preview stuff. So there's not too much that we can spoil about him. We did mention that there is a secret unknown box mate that will be coming in that Separatist Alliance Leaders Pack. More information maybe at Mini Strav. I don't know. November 15th, I think, is the date that got announced for that. Or I just announced it. I don't know. I can't keep track of what Mark does. So, and then more to come later.
Yeah,
exactly. And then we'll learn more and more about those folks as time goes on. But that was a very early stealth announcement. As the story, as I mentioned during the interviews at Gen Con, we got him in painted and a couple of the other things in. They just arrived from the painters like a few weeks before we were packing or ready to leave for Gen Con. So we were right in the midst of packing, and Dallas and I were kind of looking at each other, and he's like, "We should take these, ha ha ha." And I was like, "Yeah, why don't we? Who's going to stop us? You know, like, Ross isn't here; he doesn't know, and we'll just slide him into the case." So
the wheel bike stuff too looks fantastic. Oh my god, those models are amazing, and the paint job you did on them,
phenomenal.
That Grievous might be my favorite miniature we've ever made.
That Grievous is almost enough to get me into droids just because of how awesome it looks. Like,
maybe when there's a battle force that's like only wheel bikes, you know, you'll have your way to go, right? Just be like,
I mean, if I'm gonna play droids, I might as well play fun droids. So
exactly. You never know.
Wheel
right?
bikes and Hellfire tanks.
We had someone on a Discord like, "Do you think it's gonna have a melee or overrun?" And it's like, look at it. Like that's like all it does is overrun.
It might be the only thing it does.
Yeah, like if you watch them, I mean, even if you watch the big chasing with Grievous, right? Like it's this weird wheel bike, but it's got the 4 legs, so like it can pounce. So yeah, I mean, it's gonna crush a fool. It's what it's gonna do. It's gonna run you over.
Yeah.
It's clutching my ion rifle, just like shaking. So yeah.
Well, this has been great. I again will always give another opportunity if there's anything else you guys would like to say or share. But yeah, custom commanders and operatives look amazing. The Jedi sound very cool as well. I heard you throwing out a good side mall trying to get me to play clones. I respect the game, Will Shick. I respect it.
Yeah, look, I mean, you know, sometimes you're good, but you just want to be a little bad, you know, and so you gotta put those things in. No, thanks so much for having us. It's always a blast. So hopefully we'll get to come back on and talk about all the cool mini strat reveals, which will be November 15th. And obviously we also have our developer update that's going to be happening at that point. So we'll talk a little bit about where we feel like the game is, the meta, all that good stuff. So November is going to be a pretty exciting time for Legion. And of course, you know, as far as everything else goes, we got the starters coming out this month, next month. So if you've been waiting, now's your time. If you've been playing, get ready for all the new folks that are going to come in with those boxes, and let's grow the community and bring it into next year when all of these cool things start rolling out as well.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Thank you.
All right.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for having us.
Super exciting. Thanks for joining us, guys. And until next time, X and O, it's a game away.